and we will dive right in. But it is so good to see your faces, so I'm going to keep them up on
You
my
too.
screen.
You
Alrighty.
too.
Beautiful. Where'd you guys go? Please be there. Oh, did I not share my screen? That's why. I'm like looking at the presentation like, oh, why aren't you guys there anymore? There we go. Share screen. Alrighty. Beautiful. So tonight is mindfulness, meditation, and breath work. Super stoked. We're going to go through a lot of things. And I think knowing both of you, you've probably heard some of this stuff before. So what I really want to do is just to do a brief overview of mindfulness, not brief, but I want to do an overview of each and then really focus on different ways you can access the nervous system, as well as do a couple of practices together tonight and just talk a little bit more, just discuss more about how this can be really used to our best advantage as well. So there is kind of a decent amount that we're going to cover. And the one thing that might be really new that I love sharing with people is all about nasal breathing. And Liza, we might have talked about this a little bit before, but I think especially actually given the current state of the world with COVID and just sickness and health in general, nasal breathing is really going to be an interesting topic, at least. And I will share some of my book recommendations as well. There's one in particular that is, a lot of the books on these topics are very heavy and research based, but I finally found
Yeah.
one that is perfect. It is the perfect mix of research with anecdotal stories, with historical stories, with it keeps you engaged, but it gives you all the facts that you need. So I love sharing it.
I love that style.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I'm like, you can't. There's another one that I have, and I'll share it with you guys called The Oxygen Advantage, and it is chock full of wonderful information. But it is like reading a textbook, and I
It's
read it.
dense, yeah.
Yeah, I read it, front to back, but I was reading it like I was reading it like a school assignment,
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And the other one is Breathe, and I'll share it in a second. But Breathe by James Nestor, and he's a great storyteller. He's an investigative journalist, and he's just like highly recommend. But I will share all of that. But before that, we'll do a little bit of a check-in. I'm going to invite you both to, if you have sage or a candle and you just want to light it, just kind of anchor yourself into the space, do so. Palo Santo today. And then we're just going to take a moment.
Nature's specific sense, and seasonal specific scents and things inspired by the winter solstice and
I love it.
session. So I've got like peppermint and eucalyptus in my
I will share. I'll share with you guys, not necessarily related to nourish your nervous system, but I found a new brand of incense that I am like fully obsessed with. It's very nature based. Their like tagline really is like nature calls you back or something, but it's also called Sea Witches, which I love. But they have like very seasonal scents, and they have a scent that's called Krampus, which is a Germanic folklore Krampus. And so I'm German, so I really resonated with that as well. But it's more like it has like frankincense in the incense, and very like woody and seasonal. But we will start closing your eyes down, and whether you're sitting on a chair, having your sits bone rooted, or your feet down, or just sitting cross-legged, feel really grounded here for a moment. I'm going to invite you to take 2 deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Filling up and letting go. And just taking a moment to give yourself this space to kind of drop into our time together tonight, to drop into your physical body. Just notice where you might be holding on to any tension, any different sensation. And then draw your awareness to your breath, noticing the quality of your breath, the pace of your breath, and how it makes you feel to inhale and exhale right here. And then bringing your awareness to your energy here today. Do you feel like you're a little more tired, or you're joyful and energized? And bringing your awareness next to kind of the thoughts that are circling through your mind. We all have this kind of highlight reel, if you will, and that highlight reel might not be the best word. Sometimes it's low light reel, but we got a reel going on anyway, and just kind of giving acknowledgement to what that is and where that is without a label of good or bad, but just kind of noticing. And then last but not least, bringing your awareness to your emotions. Anything that kind of pops up when I say the word emotion. And there might not, but just noticing. And letting yourself once again just land back in this present moment, the sights, the sounds, the feelings. Just dropping into our time here together tonight. So we'll take one more big breath in and sigh it out. Eyes can just flutter open and just kind of giving one word, saying what's your word for how you're feeling this evening. It can be any part of your feelings, if you will. Beautiful. I am very grateful to be here with both of you all. So thank you for being here. Anything you guys would like to share, feel free. Floor is open.
I would say I'm
You know, go ahead.
I would say I'm scattered.
Yeah. Okay. Understandable.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty grateful though for even though we've been traveling. So this is really the first day my company left this morning. So since before Christmas, this is it. This was my life, and it was a great time, and I'm grateful for it. But it also has its stressors to be around the noise so much of other people. And so I was really, and I'm in a rental house where they have like a tile floor, and it's an open concept. It's just one big room, really, and it echoes. And so I was really, my nervous system has kind of been challenged with even my own voice in it. I sort of hear it now.
Yeah.
So I've been using and the thing I want to bring up, the reason I give you all that stuff that you don't really need to know is that I have been using the techniques, the breathing techniques at night, the tapping in particular, the thing which I can never pronounce that I use on my vagus nerve.
Gosh.
All of those things, and also the neck exercises that pulling on that neck and looking up that we've done so many times, just to kind of get myself out of sometimes I just go into the shower and sit in there and do it. Not because I don't love everybody, but it just really gets on my last nerve. The best part about it is that I think in years past, I would have acted that out somehow, but I didn't.
Yep.
And that's, I think, due to the work I'm doing and we're doing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
I feel pretty relaxed around all of that. I'm glad to be back in the fold, so to speak.
Good. I love that. And I think, one thing with the nervous system, and I think everyone's a little bit different, but I totally understand what you're saying there, because I think it's a feeling of being overstimulated sometimes.
It is.
And that can be really overwhelming, and that can cause tension. And it goes back to that kind of that cup thing. Like if even like sensory, like I'm talking like and I think about it with the holidays a lot too, because like the noise is louder, so that adds more more information. But then also like more people are touching you around the holidays sometimes too. Maybe not this year as much, but like the hugs and the little if there's little kids around, like that. And then there's more even like taste, there's more sounds, there's more smells. And as humans, we really interact sensory. We can use senses to relax our nervous system, but at the same point, anything that you can use to relax your nervous system, you can probably use to ramp up your nervous system too. So,
and I think that's true because some of the tools that you've given us are so useful. You know, I have a sister who I love and adore in every way, except that she talks non-stop. And when I say she talks non-stop, I mean it. She can't help herself. She orally processes on every level, and knows she does it, but doesn't really when you're with your sister. You don't stop those things. And so it was really helpful to have the tools to just stay in my own body and my own mind.
Right. I love that. Oh, so good. I love that takeaway. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to share our card pull for today, and then we'll dive into some things. So our card pull, I pulled it from the Mermaids and Dolphins. It says, it's a little mermaid, and it says, wait, don't rush into action right now. Bide your time for better results. In our little book, it says, if you take action now, you'll miss a window of opportunity that's coming up for you shortly. Don't worry, you'll know in your heart and gut when that moment arrives. In the meantime, it's important to meditate and make sure that your breathing is deep and frequent. Often we hold our breath or experience shortened breath during stressful periods. You're also on the verge of receiving new information that will alter the course of action you plan to take, leading you in a more positive direction. By waiting, the outcome will be much more enjoyable than if you took action. Without this added information, affirm, I have infinite patience and I am divinely directed to always be in the right place at the right time. And I do have to say, I didn't actually purposely pick that. I just shuffled the deck and it told us to breathe and meditate. So we're going to breathe and meditate tonight. That was already on the plan. So good. Awesome. So I want to do just a brief overview of the vagus nerve because I think it's super important piece of understanding how meditation, mindfulness, and breath work is going to affect our nervous system. So, and also I think it's important because it is something that is a newer concept to a lot of us. So the vagus nerve, once again, it's going to be an important part of the story. And part of that is because of where it goes through. It passes through our heart, your belly, your diaphragm, your lungs, your throat, your inner ear, and your facial muscles. So a lot of the techniques that we've taught so far accesses the vagus nerve. We've done a couple of ear ones, some facial muscles, even some of the throat ones. So basically, you can access the vagus nerve or stimulate the vagus nerve by stimulating heart, belly, diaphragm, lungs, throat, inner ear, facial muscles. Tonight, we're going to learn a little bit more about the heart, the belly, the diaphragm, and the lungs, where in the past, we've done a little bit more of the other ones. It's also has nerve fibers that go throughout your entire stomach and intestine. Those are your enteric brain. And 90% of those fibers connect back to the brain through the vagus nerve. So I think some of the breathing techniques will be, with the belly or with the diaphragm that can access those fibers as well. But I thought something interesting in my research that came up is like that vagus nerve, it's what's behind that kind of gut instinct or that feeling in your gut or that knot in your throat or when you're smiling. That's the vagus nerve, some of those feeling sensations we get. And it really is this kind of communication system between our sensations and our emotions. Sometimes I'll say, especially when people are in pain, like sometimes sensation creates emotion. Sometimes pain or the sensation of pain causes an emotion of anger or distress or anxiety. But also, alternatively, sometimes anxiety or anger or stress can cause physical pain. And that's really that two-way radio system of the vagus nerve. And that's why, I know both of you have, experienced me talk about these things before, but that's why when it comes to like physical pain, it's not just the pain we're treating, it's the nervous system we're treating too. We kind of have to go back and forth because of how they communicate. And ditto on the breathing. When we get to breathing, you'll start to see how when people are having a panic attack, their breathing's escalated. But sometimes, and you might have experienced this yourself, but I remember this from playing sports. Like sometimes people's breathing like if they push themselves too hard and their breathing elevated, it could lead to a panic attack because that was what their panic attack felt like. So it's not saying that like you can always completely stop a panic attack or stop a way you're feeling. It's just that sometimes it is a two-way street, and that's why some of these techniques can be so powerful is if you can catch it before you've kind of tipped over the edge, then you can use the breath and mindfulness and meditation techniques just kind of keep you from popping over that edge of what. And some people it's panic attacks, some people it's anger, so, there's some people it's depression. It depends, but that two-way communication is super important. With that said, there's also yep.
Will you go back just one to the bottom one there, the potential off switch?
Potential off switch. Yeah, sorry, I missed that one.
So right.
The vagus nerve really plays a role in inflammation and inflammation-related diseases. So things like, these are just a couple. These are very random ones: epilepsy, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. Really, a lot of autoimmune disorders. There's a lot of inflammation with autoimmune disorders. Not everyone, because some of them, attack different things, but things even like RA is a good one. And it's not saying an off switch in terms of like you won't have RA if you access the vagus nerve. It's just the vagus nerve can be used to decrease inflammation in the body, which can decrease flare-ups. So it's not curing the disease or the inflammation-related disease, but it's improving the symptoms. And you know what? I think maybe it can cure it one day, but there's not research on that right now. The research is just showing.
That's incredible.
That, yeah,
that's incredible.
The research and a lot of what the research is showing in general. And I'll be honest, this is something that I'm really intrigued in, but it's complicated. Is just the role of inflammation in general, because there is a lot of research on inflammation with depression and mental illness, but also inflammation and pain. And sometimes what I'll see, especially with my clients who have autoimmune disorders, is that whenever they've been through a more high inflammatory state, like around the holidays when there's more sugar and there's more alcohol and there's more stress and there's more air travel, some of their symptoms flare up. And people always want a reason for it. And sometimes the reason is just your body has higher inflammation in it right now. And it's not necessarily that you did anything wrong. But if I make, and I think we might have discussed this at some point in our previous, but like you can make the conscious choice to like, I'm going to have this extra glass of wine, but you also might have to make that conscious choice of, oh yeah, tomorrow my body might feel a little bit more inflamed. And we'll talk about this even further when we talk lymphatic system next month too. But I think inflammation plays such a huge role in how our physical body feels on a day-to-day basis. So that this vagus nerve as a way to kind of switch off inflammation can be really powerful for some of these more chronic disorders and illnesses.
Thanks.
Of course, no, thank you for pulling us back. I'm stuck. There we go. So we already talked about this too, but different ways you can stimulate the vagus nerve is altering the rhythm of breath, practicing body awareness, bringing it back to kind of the senses and where you are, different yoga poses that kind of move the throat, the neck, the spine, even the stomach. Twists are really great for the vagus nerve. And then stimulating any of those areas, like touching your stomach, touching your diaphragm, touching your face, your throat, your nose, which are things that we've done here together, but we'll continue to learn more and more. All of that is going to stimulate the vagus nerve. And that can be through self-massage or sensory stimulation. So like tapping is more like sensory stimulation, whereas the gua sha is more self-massage. So just two different ways to kind of get at the same beast. And we'll talk about a couple more here. And then just briefly, polyvagal theory. It's just that theory that there are different stages, evolutionary stages, and really the vagus nerve has that dorsal vagus and that ventral vagal. And just bringing that back around because we will be talking about different types of breath work that can kind of stimulate different vagus nerve kind of systems. So this is one of my all-time favorite quotes about mindfulness. I think I've shared it in every lecture I've ever given on mindfulness or meditation, so I will share it with you all as well. But the quote is, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I often give the example of someone cutting off in traffic because like it's Boston and I drive through a circle of death every day to get everywhere. But someone cuts you off in traffic. The stimulus is someone cutting off in traffic. The response is what comes next. Mindfulness is not saying you can't curse at them and honk at them, but it's this, you have this moment of like pause, and it's a millisecond sometimes, and being like, I'm going to honk at this person because they deserve it. And I'm not going to let that ruin the rest of my day. Because sometimes it's like we immediately react, whether that kind of like you were saying, Liza, like in the past you might have reacted. And now mindfulness is this, okay, is there anything I can do to like decrease my, turn my reaction into a response? Because I think there's a difference between a reaction and a response. And a lot of times when we're in a heightened nervous system state or we're in a depressed nervous system state, it's reaction. It's gut. It's like anger or anxiety, or you don't give yourself the time to process it. So developing body awareness and mindfulness is giving you that ability to connect into the space between stimulus response and to really like know that space. That's a mindful person. I would consider that a mindful being. And you know, this is a whole list of all different ways I've explained mindfulness in the past, but you know, it's awareness of mind, body, and space around you. I think that what you shared earlier, Liza, was a perfect example of mindfulness. Like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling. I might want to react, but maybe there's something else I can do so that I respond instead of react. It's about just being present in the moment, and it can be tuning in and breathing. In yoga classes, I call it like the art of noticing. Like you're not trying to like do anything about it necessarily, but you're just noticing like, oh, my hip's a little bit tight. Oh, my balance is a little bit off. It's about being curious to mindfulness in a certain sense.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what I'm wondering as I'm hearing you talk is there was a piece of it that is understanding it's yours.
Yes. Yep.
That
And also understanding that you don't necessarily have to do something about everything in the moment, I think, too.
right, exactly.
You know, like if you're in a situation where you're like, this person is driving me crazy,
But
but
the
you're like, I'm not
irritation is mine. The irritation is mine.
gonna, yeah, and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna do anything about that. The only thing I might
Yeah.
do is something that's gonna serve me. I'm not gonna like snap at them or complain.
Right.
It's not even saying that snapping or complaining is bad. It's just like, you know, I think about this a lot in arguments between like couples too. Like, it's like the difference between just like being like, oh, screw you, or like saying something on purpose because you're like, I'm like, no, like, I'm really frustrated with you. I'm annoyed, and I like you're taking the responsibility. This is how I feel right now, and I need to take a step away, and I don't want to talk to you versus like, screw you, I'm not talking to you. It's a different, like, this is where I am at and I have what I'm noticing here. And sometimes the response is stepping away. Sometimes there's so many different ways that it's not about what comes after that. It's about that experience of this is where I'm at. And then what you can make a more a better informed decision after that.
Yeah, about everything.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So some benefits. This is like quite literally a very long list of things, but stress is different illnesses, depressive symptoms, it improves resiliency. Practicing mindfulness can decrease your burnout. There's even some really good research on lowering blood pressure and relieving GI difficulties. You know, there's more and more research coming out about how it can help more chronic conditions like IBS and fibromyalgia and psoriasis and anxiety. And I feel like it seems like this magical cure-all, but I think it really does come back to the like being more in the present moment, and then we can make better decisions about what we need. I think about a lot for anxiety. Like personally, I'll share a little personal anecdote there. Like my anxiety is sometimes around like what might happen. Like if I text this person, will they be mad? Or if I do this, and a way for me to bring
Carrie, I've got to step away for a second, Carrie.
no worries. And like mindfulness for me is more of that like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Maybe if I take action, I can, you know, resolve that sensation, if you will. And sometimes I don't resolve it. Sometimes it's just like being with the emotion too. I'm gonna give her. We'll keep going just because the sake of getting everything done. But this is another one of my favorite quotes about mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to stay focused on the present moment in a non-judgmental way as a powerful catalyst for contentment. And I think the key thing here that I always say is that non-judgmental way. And I'm Julia. I'm sure you've heard me say this in yoga because I feel like a broken record sometimes when I teach. And I'm like, can you feel where you are without labeling it as good, bad, or otherwise? Like, you might show up to yoga class and be like, yeah, my low back is super stiff. Um, and but that doesn't mean you're bad
Sorry.
or you're not going to do it. No, you're good. We just went to the net. We just had this one slide.
I was listening. I took
Good.
it with
Oh,
me.
good. I think it's that non-judgmental way that's also really important. And I think it comes once back to that kind of decision making. It's like, okay, like I'm feeling this way. Like, say you are getting overstimulated by someone or a situation. Like, I'm feeling overstimulated. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person or I can't handle my family or I don't love my family or I don't love this thing. That's just where I am right now. So I'm not going to throw judgment at myself either, because judgment's just going to make me feel worse, most likely. And I think that's another level of the mindfulness piece as well. That's almost just as magical. So a little bit, more about the nervous system. So how mindfulness plays a role in the nervous system. It's a little bit more subtle and a little bit less studied, but it's about that bringing awareness back to your body. Mindfulness is body awareness, or body awareness is a form of mindfulness, I should say. Something is bringing awareness to your breath. Your breath is one of the most powerful ways to access different parasympathetic and nervous system states. So just the act of noticing your breath is going to help you better access where you are in your nervous system. And mindfulness really is a constant practice of listening to our bodies. And I should add there, listening to like our emotions and our minds and our energy too, because I do truly believe, and this is my personal practice, if I can be more aware of like where I am in the current moment, I can make better decisions and choices to honor my current self, not who I hope I was going to be or who I was yesterday or how I want to feel, but I can like be who I am here and do take the best action to serve that Carrie. And sometimes that looks like going for a walk or eating or working out. And sometimes that's like recognizing that I might need to sleep more or nap or rest more. It's not like a certain practice. It's just the practice of noticing at the end of the day. And then the other way is also noticing when that flip kind of switch that switch is what I'm saying. That switch kind of flips and you're in a different state. And that I think is a little bit harder. So when you're experiencing like, oh, I'm like ticked up a notch, I'm in that sympathetic state, having mindfulness and noticing that helps you better be like, I might need to do something to nourish my vagus nerve, or I might need to remove myself, or I might need to just focus on my breath. So it's also that like mindfulness is your ability to notice when you need a little bit more support and better give it to yourself. So some just mindful tricks for the nervous system, one of them, and we've done this one before, but checking in with your 5 bodies. We did this in the beginning: energetic, physical, emotional, mental, subtle, which is breath. Even just pausing, say you're like in the middle of something and you're noticing you're feeling a little bit more stress. One of my favorite practices that I'll do when I feel like I've just gotten ahead of myself is taking 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And that's just a really good reset for the nervous system, because then you're bringing yourself back to your breath. I'll also do that when like moving my body in a yoga practice or walking, like when I feel like my breath's been a little bit more like ragged, if you will, or like when I used to run. Not that I do that anymore, but when I used to run, like taking 3 deep breaths is a good reset. Anything that brings awareness to your 5 senses is a really great mindful way to tap into the nervous system. And then eye movements. And I'll make a video of this last one, but your eye is very connected to the vagus nerve. And I'm going to share a little bit more about eye movements in the module tomorrow. But, your eyes play a huge role in the vagus nerve. So even drishti in yoga is a single point of focus. It's a lot with balancing as well. You want a single point of focus. That's not only good because, like you're looking at something that doesn't move, so then you don't move, but it also gets your mind settling on a certain point. So it can be used when, like, even just meditating. Some people will meditate on an object as a way to focus and settle their mind. one thing, it's called, I forget what culture it is, which I should know, but it's called Trikarta. It's candle gazing. It's a form of meditation. You light a candle and just watch the wick flicker, and it's stimulating and soothing, but it really helps settle the mind. And I can't believe I'm forgetting what the culture is, but it's a Jakarta is a, I want to say it's Sanskrit, but I don't know if that's right. I'll look it up and let me write that down so I look it up, because I'm like, I want to give the appropriate what's it called, the appropriate knowledge to what it is. But Jakarta, candle gazing. So it's a way you can use your eyes. And then, as we've done in some of our exercises, like the basic exercise with the eye movement, that's all kind of a really mindful way to move your eyes. Another one is what's called convergence. I actually use this a lot in concussion therapy when I used to do a little bit more concussion rehabilitation. But convergence is bringing your ability for your eyes to kind of come in and see things close up without seeing double. So the research that I was looking into was saying that convergence therapy helps reset vagal tone and reduce anxiety, which makes sense if you think about it. I know it from a concussion standpoint, but a lot of people after a concussion, their autonomic nervous system, their nervous system is out of whack. So convergent, I did it a lot of times because people were seeing double, but it also had this added effect of decreasing some of their other symptoms, which I always found curious until I started doing more research into it and came across its relationship to the vagus nerve, which I thought was pretty cool. But you know what? Just because we're here, we'll test this just out of curiosity. You both have glasses on, so I'm gonna have you keep them on. Depending on your frames, you might cut them off a little bit, but we'll play around with it. So testing convergence is really, you take your thumb in front of you in line with your nose, and you look at your thumb, and then you really slowly bring it as close as you can to your nose. And you want to see if you can get within like 3 inches of your nose and still see a singular image. Yeah, you get as close as you can. Let me know if and when you see double.
Pretty close.
Cool, that's good. So like you want to be able to get like it's not 3 inches, 3 centimeters is like you want to be at, if you see double past 3 centimeters, then you probably want to do some convergence kind of therapy. But it's also good for the vagus nerve. So one exercise, and I'll make a video for this, but I use this in concussion rehab all the time, but it also is really good for our purposes. You put one finger or one thumb in front of the other. So this one comes to like where you might be seeing double or just kind of close to your nose. And then whatever this distance is, then the other thumb goes behind it like that. You look at the first thumb, so the first thumb is clear and the second one's blurry, and you hold for about 3 seconds. And then you look past the first thumb and look at the second thumb. So the second thumb is clear, but the first thumb is blurry. Hold for about 3 seconds, and then you switch. And it's really about the ability to switch your gaze from something up close to something far away. This is also super helpful for like college kids who have difficulty focusing when they have to switch from like the board, or any kid's board, to the laptop or the table. But I'll make a video on that one. Yeah, it's a good one from my concussion days. Alrighty. Other ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, just to kind of reiterate it: humming, conscious breathing, which we'll go through a lot, a Valsalva maneuver, which is attempting to exhale against closed airways. So it's keeping your mouth closed, like almost like you're trying to blow your ears out. It increases pressure inside the chest cavity, which increases vagal tone. I don't really recommend that one like 100% of the time because it's not like the most comforting one out of all of them. So like if you really need it, it's good to do that sort of thing. The diving reflex is one that we haven't gone over yet. This is why like a lot of cold therapy is really popular right now. Splashing cold water on your face from lips to scalp line is going to stimulate the vagus nerve. but it goes back to that, like, the facial piece of it. You can also hold ice cubes in a Ziploc bag and place against your face. I feel like actually the water is easier, but take your pick. Slows your heart rate, increases blood flow to your brain, reduces anger, and relaxes your body. So next time someone gets angry at you, just throw a glass of cold water in their face and see if that helps. No, I'm just kidding.
That's why they do that.
Next time you're mad at someone. And then connection, healthy connection. There's this practice called hugging until relaxed. So standing on your own 2 feet and placing your hands around someone that you feel safe with, focusing on yourself, and see if you can quiet yourself way, way down. I think that I personally joke that there's like certain people that I feel way more safer with than others. And Chris was like, Chris and I have been dating forever, but when we first started dating, I used to never fall asleep like at friends' houses watching movies. When we first started dating, I would like pass out next to him watching a TV show like at like 9 o'clock at night. But I was also in grad school and my nervous system was exhausted. And I was like, at the time I was like, why am I just falling asleep? But it really was, now that I know more of the research, I was like, wow, like I really felt safe enough and relaxed enough. And my nervous system was like, you're good. But you feel it too with like, you can feel it sometimes, like even like little kids, like when they like relax into you and you kind of like all of a sudden you have their whole body weight. I feel it with my dog all the time, my roommate's dog, but like you can kind of feel like animals kind of like into that relaxation. That's tapping into that vagus nerve of that connection. Alrighty, all that kind of makes sense. Mindfulness, vagus nerve, we're all on the same page. Awesome. So meditation. Curious, do either of you have a meditation practice?
Not currently.
I'm in and out of it, but I have more than I used to.
Cool. And I don't think I went from having a really dedicated meditation practice before the pandemic, and then the pandemic really threw me off my personal game just because like it was very scheduled, and then I didn't have a schedule, and I was like, where does this go? And I personally think that meditation can be a lot of different things. For me, lately, my meditation has really been my morning walks. I used to take them with, headphones in, listening to an audiobook or podcast, but lately I've been taking them with nothing in my ears and really trying to pay attention to the sights, the sounds, and just what I'm seeing. And connecting to your 5 senses is a meditation. So while I used to have a formal meditation practice, my walks have turned into my meditation practice. So I personally believe that meditation can be a little bit more fluid than what most people think traditional meditation is. Sometimes yoga to me is a meditation practice. Like, like when I'm, those yoga classes or when you're like really into it, where you're like, how did an hour just pass? That's, to me, that's when a meditative practice. But at the end of the day, meditation is a really simple but effective just training approach to quieting the mind for a period of time and building awareness, attention, and relaxation. And it's really about focusing your mind, your attention, I should say, on something other than just the thoughts streaming through your mind and that are causing stress. And it's a technique or a tool. So it's like, and we'll get to this in a second, mindfulness is like a way of being. Meditation is a technique or a tool. So we'll talk about different meditation styles, but really the difference between I think there's a big difference between mindfulness and meditation. I personally try to practice mindfulness daily. I don't always meditate daily, but I think that there's a place for both. Meditation is a mindfulness practice, but not all mindfulness practices are meditations, if that makes sense. They don't go kind of both ways there. And mindfulness is something that you can really do throughout your day. I think for me, I try to incorporate into it like really tasting my food or really like enjoying my cup of tea or cup of coffee or like honestly chocolate at the end of the day. I'm like, I'm going to savor every last bit of this. I got they're not in my desk anymore. I had like chocolate snowmen in here for a while for between clients. But it's something that you can interloop through like any practice throughout any activity, in my opinion, throughout your day. You can practice mindfulness in. You can do mindful driving if you really want to. It's hard in Boston, but you can do it. Meditation is a practice. It's a time that you set aside for you when you do a certain technique or tool. And we'll talk about a bunch of those in just a moment. lots and lots of research on meditation, anxiety, asthma, cancer, chronic pain, depression, heart disease, high blood pressure, traumatic brain injuries. There is a plethora of research dedicated to meditation now, which I think is super powerful. Still don't know why like doctors don't prescribe it more, but that's a whole nother
They're
story.
starting to.
Yeah, they're
They're
starting
starting
to.
to.
Yeah, they're definitely starting to, which is amazing. I think there needs to be more education as to why it's important as well, but I have noticed that as well. They're starting to, and I think as the research continues to gain, and especially I'm curious, as much as COVID has been not a fun 2 years, I am really curious and dare I say excited to see what research will come out of it, because there's going to be a lot of long-term mental health implications and physical health implications. And I don't think just like taking a pill is going to be the solution for dealing with that for COVID. Not that there's anything wrong with taking medication, you know, but I think there's going to be a lot more research coming out on mindfulness and especially the vagus nerve, especially since COVID hits the lungs so much. I think I'm hopeful that there's going to be research that comes out of it. So other things, just kind of gaining more of these kind of like less tangible things, being able to gain a new perspective on stressful situations, increasing self-awareness, building tools and skills to manage stress. It can really help increase imagination and creativity, patience and tolerance, which I could definitely use more of every day. But there's a lot of different mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual benefits to meditation. And I want to dive into a couple of different style meditations because a lot of people think that meditation is just sitting there and not thinking for 20 minutes. And that's really like, yes, that can be a meditation, but that's really not the meat and bones of a meditation. There's so many different ways to meditate, and I think the more you have access to or the more you know about, the more you can find what works best for you, and that's going to be different for everyone. So there's mindfulness meditation, which is really about just paying attention to your thoughts as they pass through your mind. I kind of interweave this into my classes a lot, like notice how you feel here without judgment. Okay, come back to your breath. It's not about like obsessing over a thought. It's just kind of like you're watching the movie in your head kind of go by. Like, okay, that's interesting. That's what's coming up. And then if the thoughts become overwhelming, I'm going to focus back in on my breath. And then, okay, that thought's circling back around. Interesting once again. Okay, let me come back to my breath. So it's just this kind of act of coming in and out of awareness. And sometimes I like to follow the thought and be like, all right, where's that thought going to lead me? Okay, yep, done following that thought. Now I'm coming back to me. So that's really what's called a mindfulness meditation. A spiritual meditation
When
is,
you say, can I just ask a question? When you say
yeah,
you wrote combined concentration with awareness, can you
yeah,
say a little bit about that?
yeah. So it's like when you are, I think the concentration piece is like concentrating on being present. And, sometimes our mind can wander and suddenly we're making a grocery list and then we're off. We're like, oh, and then I'm going to make for dinner and then I'm going to do that. The concentration piece is like, I am going to keep pulling myself back to the present moment while being aware of the thoughts that pass by. Does that make sense? Like you're concentrating on how I feel in the present moment, but you're also aware that like your thoughts will lead you someplace else, and then you pull yourself back to the present moment. And that's like the concentration isn't like I'm just going to focus on one thing. It's like, no, I'm going to focus on me and being here. Does that make sense?
Yep.
um and I think,
I love what Sharon Salzberg says about that moment. Do you know what she says?
no, I don't know if
Have
I've
you
heard it.
heard
I
this?
should. No.
She says that people worry about doing meditation, that
Yeah.
the thoughts are going and they forget to breathe and it's not successful and blah, blah, blah. And she says there's really only one successful moment. And that's the moment that you realize, or as you say here, the awareness that my mind is racing. I'm going to go back to my breath. That's the moment.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
the successful meditation. When you can start to do that over and over again, that's
Yeah.
the practice.
Yes.
But that awareness is the success moment.
100% agreed. And I think that's, yeah, 100% agreed. And I think that is where the often, you know, a lot of people who are afraid of meditation are like, I can't sit for more than 2 minutes without thinking anything. Like, you know, like clear your mind and just be. And it's like, no, 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 like things are going to be happening in my mind if I try to just sit here. So it's that, yeah, that awareness, the awareness of coming back is really the meditation itself,
Yep. Yep.
not the like sitting there. And I
Yeah.
think it takes a lot of concentration in the sense of like, I'm here and I'm not over there. So I'm concentrating on being here, but I'm also where my brain wants to go over there. So it's kind of that like
Yeah.
pull and
You
plug.
could be in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. It's that like pull back and forth, if you will.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yes, great question. Spiritual meditation. So I think this is super interesting, and I haven't I don't identify as terribly religious at the moment, but I do understand why, you know, I think there's interesting practices to religion that can tie back to the nervous system. So spiritual meditation, it doesn't have to be specific religion. Like there is Christian contemplative prayer, Jewish. I can't. Oh my God, I can't pronounce anything today. Kabbalistic practices. You know, even just prayer in general can be seen as a form of meditation for sure. Yes, there's other meanings to it for sure, but just the practice of like sitting with yourself. I also think spiritual doesn't necessarily need to be tied to a religion. It's kind of just connecting to a greater power. I think a lot of it about like mother nature. Like my spiritual practices right now are really much more mother nature based. So like for me, some like a walk, like the walking meditations we did in mother nature, like feeling my feet on the ground and connecting to mother nature, that's a very spiritual experience for me and a very spiritual meditation for me when I'm connecting to that. That's my higher power, is like the grass. But you know, everyone has their different higher powers, and it's just a obvious, yeah, prayer has other implications, but it does come back to like being present with yourself and where you are. So then focus meditation is a little bit more like you have a direction. So it can be a concentration on any of the five senses, focusing on breath. Some people count mala beads, rosary beads are kind of similar. Listening to like a sound meditation is more of a focus meditation. The standing at a candle flame, the trikarta, kind of watching the candle, you're really stimulating that visual awareness. Counting your breaths. I had to put this last one in because we talked about it in Mother Nature. But when in my research, moon gazing came up as a focus meditation, and I was like, that's magical.
Yeah.
Yes, let's just stare and stare and howl at the moon. A book that's on my to read list is Women Who Run with Wolves. And I,
Oh, so good.
yeah, I haven't read it yet. I should, but it's like been on my list forever. But when I think about moon gazing, I think women who run with wolves for some reason.
Mm. Or are raised by them.
Yes,
One or the other.
exactly. Some other meditation practices are anything movement based. So walking, even gardening, tai chi, yoga, qigong, all ways that you're moving and I think more of the slower flow yoga. I mean, and sometimes the hot power classes too, but I think especially more like slow flow classes can really be moving meditations. Um, for me sometimes, and I'll share some videos of them. I actually taught it in my yoga class today. There's just like a really simple sequence where it was like just moving from one pose to the next. So it's not terribly complicated, but you're just like, I think about it as like kind of like dancey, flowy, like, okay, I'm moving, or even just like a simple with breath, like you're moving, but it's kind of a rhythmic nature to it. I think movement that has a rhythmic nature to it can be very meditative. Another one is mantra meditation. That's just repeating a word. It can be repeating a phrase too. One of my favorites, I'll type it in the chat from my first yoga teach training is, and I repeat this to myself all the time, like when I'm really like not okay, it's, I know I am breathing in. I know I am breathing out. I'm typing it out as I say it. Breathing in, I calm my body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. I dwell in the present moment. I know This is a precious moment. And you just repeat that over and over again. I know I'm breathing in. I know I'm breathing out. Breathing in, I calm my body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. I dwell in the present moment. I know this is a precious moment. It can be called a meta meditation sometimes, or also a gata, I want to say is what it was. But that's like, there's other ones that you can come up with your own. I love that because it kind of like rhymes a little bit and it feels very rhythmic. But that's one of my favorite kind of mantra meditations. And I'll share that with you guys as well, as a reminder, but it's in the chat if you want to write it down.
And I use one that you often say in yoga, which is just I inhale, I exhale. I use that all the time.
I love that.
Other classes, because I'm like, what was that thing that Carrie said? Yeah. It's just so simple. It's so straightforward. It's like, yes, just acknowledgement of what you're doing, and that's all you need to do.
Yep. Sometimes with that one, I'll do I inhale, I exhale, I fill up, I let go. I've realized over the years that in yoga, teaching yoga, there's like certain phrases that I do repeat a lot. Hopefully they're good phrases and they're not pissing people off, but that is what I inhale, I exhale, I fill up, I let go. There's a third piece I add to it sometimes and I can't think of it right now. I fill up, I let go. There's like, I show up, and there's another one that I do sometimes. Oh, I can't remember right now. I probably said it this morning too. I inhale, I exhale, I fill up, I let go. I'm gonna have to think about that one because there's a third piece. Sometimes I just do the two, and sometimes I do a third piece. But that's I like that one as well. I forgot that I even said that. So thank you for bringing it up. Om is another mantra. There's a lot of mantras that are Sanskrit. What's the one? I'm gonna butcher it. There's one that's like very common that people will quite literally chant. That is very popular in kind of the yoga world. Another form of meditation is transcendental meditation. It's a really specific one that it's the one that it like requires, and I use that loosely, like 2 20-minute meditations a day, and like they're very like, you have to do it in the morning, you have to do it in the afternoon. I practiced it for a while and it was really great. But I don't think everyone needs to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. Like if you can, amazing. If you can't, like, let's not beat ourselves up about something else. But it is, it's like, we don't need to put that pressure on ourselves. I will say I did do that after my aunt passed away, because I was really struggling and I had a lot more space. So it was a really great anchor for me in a time of extreme turmoil. But once I started feeling better, I was like, it made me more stressed to try to do it twice a day. So I just started doing it once a day. Next. So more progressive relaxation. You guys will have a video of this, and I might have shared it already, but it's just, this is a great one for sleeping. It's aimed at reducing tension in the body and promoting relaxation, and it's just slowly tightening and relaxing one muscle group at a time. I usually go from the toes up to the head. Some people go from head to toes. It's super great, super easy. You can lead yourself through it, or you can listen to someone else's voice do it. Loving kindness meditation is a really popular one. It's actually a really popular one in terms of the vagus nerve. There's a lot of research showing the power of gratitude's connection to the vagus nerve. And a loving kindness meditation is kind of like a gratitude meditation. And there's a lot of different ways that people do that. And I'll have a loving kindness meditation for you all. And I'll be honest, I teach it often, and it changes from time to time. But one of the most common ways is the most common way that I like is sending love to someone you care about, feeling it, sending gratitude to someone you care about, sending love to someone that pisses you off, for lack of a better word, sending love to someone that you're indifferent about, sending love to the greater world, and then sending love to yourself. So it's kind of just like taking through different ways of expressing gratitude, and love. And there's some mantras that go with it too, but it's very open to interpretation, but it's kind of the premise of it is opening the mind to receive loves from others and sending well wishes and well-being to others as well. And there will be one of the member vaults. But but that's one like literally every time I do it, I say something slightly different. So
Yeah, that's the one I
every
use too.
yeah, every recording is slightly different. And then visualization. It's really what it says involves imagining a scene vividly and using all five senses to add as much detail as possible. Um, I will say I forgot about how powerful this was. Actually, a mutual friend of Liza and I's took me through some writing exercises the other day as a gift to me. And she had me visualizing like all sorts of things and really incorporating the five senses, and it was just a magical experience, but it did remind me like, oh my gosh, like visualizing and like, so what she did with me was a memory from childhood, and okay, the memory, but then like anchor your senses into it. What did you smell? What did you hear? What did you see? And it just makes it that much more powerful. And it was a writing exercise, but it also was a mini meditation in the moment. And it was a beautiful reminder of it because I had forgotten about visualization meditations. And it's often used. That's the big one used in sports. I used to do them a lot with sports. Like I I don't know who told me to do it if I did it myself, but visualize yourself making the layup, visualize yourself like being strong out there. Um, and a lot of professional athletes, that's probably the meditation they do the most is visualization meditations,
Yeah.
which is really cool too. All right. Silence isn't empty, it is full of answers. So, oh, perfect. Doing great on time. We're going to do a mini meditation demonstration. What I will do, I have a couple what we'll do is we'll take like a 3-minute break if anyone needs to run to the bathroom really quickly. And we're gonna in a moment we'll do that, but we're gonna do a meditation. And I'm curious, I had a couple ideas, but is there anything in particular that either of you haven't experienced before that you would like to be led through any sort of meditation? If not, no worries. I have a couple of things in mind, but just wanted to kind of see if there's anything you're craving this evening.
No, I'm good to go with the flow.
Cool. Alrighty. It is 7:06. We're gonna take just like a 2-minute break if you want to grab a cup of water or go to the bathroom. Because then we'll dive back in for the rest of it. We'll get started at like 7:09. 3-minute break.
Cool. Cool.
And I'm just gonna grab one notebook of mine. Alrighty, friends. Welcome back. So I made a last minute decision to change the meditation I was going to do. And I can't remember if I have a recording of it. I can't remember if I share with you, but it's my all-time favorite meditation, I think, ever. I learned it when I did Love Your Brain training for yoga and meditation for traumatic brain injury. So we're going to do that one. I
Oh,
was
good.
Julie to get back. It's like literally my favorite one. I need to do this one
Do you
again.
think, is PTSD considered a brain injury?
That's a great question. Because often people with a brain injury have PTSD.
Right.
So
I guess it isn't. It's a body memory, isn't it? I don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer either. I can definitely look into. I'm going to look into that a little bit more. Let me write that down because that is interesting. Because a lot of times, like I obviously I don't treat PTSD, but I've treated people who have PTSD because of the injury that I'm working with. Specific, like traumatic brain injury is a big one, but even like chronic pain's a big one, like things like that. And I think nervous system dysregulation is often common with PTSD.
Interesting.
Hold on, I'm gonna write that down. Is it a brain injury? Yeah, I don't have a right answer, but I'm gonna do more research into that. I'd be intrigued myself. Because it definitely there's a lot of like similar mechanisms as well. Because a lot of times the symptoms of PTSD are very like with brain injuries. The symptoms are similar, if you will, but like
Well, you know that when you're injured,
yeah,
it can change your, and does, trauma changes your brain
right,
chemistry
right,
instantaneously, and you
exactly,
can't go back.
yeah,
So I don't know whether you consider that
a brain injury or not.
a brain injury or not. But
Honestly, it probably
maybe,
depends on who you ask.
yeah, I bet.
How
I bet.
how scientific it is. Okay, we're gonna
Howard
do
does the same thing.
yeah. We're gonna do a mountain meditation. It's one of my favorites. I'm gonna recommend that you stay seated for this one, and sit up nice and tall. So when you are ready, we're just gonna do a shortened version so we have enough time for a breath work section. You're gonna close your eyes and just take a nice deep breath in through the nose and an open mouth. Just begin to sense the support you have where your body makes contact with the surface beneath you, the chair or the floor. Notice the stability of this support, how it doesn't change. Your chair is beneath you, your sits bones rooted, your feet rooted. Now call into mind an image of the most beautiful mountain you know or can imagine. Let it gradually come into greater focus. And even if it doesn't come as a visual image, focus on the sense of the mountain. Feel its overall shape, its peaks in the sky, its large base rooted in the ground, its sloping sides. Really feel the mountain. Notice how massive it is, how solid and strong, how still. What season is it on your mountain? Does it have snow or meadows of flowers, streams or waterfalls? Notice its qualities and how you feel observing it. Now, see if you can bring the mountain into your own body so that your body becomes the strong, solid, peaceful mountain. Your head becomes the peak, reaching to the sky with confidence. Your shoulders and arms, the sides of the mountain, protecting you, holding you together. Your legs, your sits bones, your pelvis, the solid base, supporting you. Feel the body long and tall, strong like the mountain. And as you sit here, become aware that as the sun travels across the sky, the light and colors are changing every moment. Night follows day, day follows night. night to day, day to night. Bringing awareness, bringing warmth and coolness, stars and clouds, sunshine and rain. Through it all, the mountain just sits, experiencing changes in each moment, night to day, day to night. It is constantly changing, yet always just being itself. The mountain remains still and strong as the seasons follow into one another. As the weather shifts from intense storms to brilliant sun to howling winds, none of this matters to the mountain, which always remains its essential self. Things may change on the outside, may change around the mountain. None of it matters. The mountain is always itself. Feel this strong, still presence in the face of everything that changes in your life. That whatever happens on the surface doesn't take away from your essential self. We all have periods of light and darkness, ease and intensity, happiness and sadness. The things that happen to us, our thoughts and feelings, are very much like the weather of the mountain. They are changing, but always beneath them lies our essential strong selves. Can you feel the sense of the mountain within you? The sense of the seasons coming and going, ebbing and flowing, while still remaining yourself, your true essential self. With each breath, feel your essential strong self. Feel the strength filling up your body on each exhale. Inhale. And on each exhale, feel yourself settling into that foundation, that support. Each inhale is your strong essential self, and each exhale is your foundation. Together, we'll take one more big breath in and let it go. So good. Take your time to come on back out of that. For the sake of time, I just kept it to 5 minutes, but that is one that it's actually originally a John Kabat-Zinn meditation, and you could do it like for 20 minutes. There's an extended version, which I will record, and I think I have recorded it, I should say, and we'll send it to you all. How'd that feel? You doing okay? Thumbs up. Cool. So meditation on the nervous system. It can actually lead to an increase in gray matter density in the hippocampus and other frontal regions of the brain, which really aids in learning, cognition, memory, better retention of facts, more mindful behavior, increased cognition, attention, self-awareness, all good stuff, right? It also can really calm down your sympathetic nervous system, especially if you're in that chronic sympathetic overdrive. It decreases the sympathetic activity and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It can also really decrease emotional reactivity, as well as reduce pain, stress, anxiety, and depression. So, like I said, lots more research coming out about meditation, which is awesome, and the way it supports the nervous system. Regular meditation practice can also kind of help balance the nervous system. So a lot of times we're in balance. We might be too much in sympathetic or too much in parasympathetic. It's a great way to find that balance. So it doesn't necessarily just stimulate the parasympathetic or the sympathetic. It balances the nervous system. It also alters our heart rate variability, which we talked in the beginning of our time together. Heart rate variability is that assessment of sympathetic and parasympathetic function, and changes higher heart rate variability, HRV, indicates greater parasympathetic activity and lower sympathetic activity. And HRV is super important when you're sleeping, actually. You want to have a high heart rate variability when you're sleeping because that means you're truly resting and your body's in that parasympathetic rest and digest state. So meditation can help you get into that higher HRV kind of category. I'm not wearing it right now, but I used to wear the Oura Ring and the Whoop band from time to time, and they have you track like your daily habits, and then it tracks your HRV. And they're trying to do with their research is like, okay, if someone does X habits, is that how much is that going to increase their heart rate availability, and get research on what habits really have the most effect on heart rate availability. Like you can track anything in your Whoop band and you can opt in to like be a part of the research, but like they track everything from like food to alcohol to sex to meditation to cold baths to saunas, and then compare it to like HRV and sleep quality, which is super interesting. But takes a while to study all the effects of that. So, segueing into breath work. At the very basic level, breath is the foundation of life. It is a big foundation of a lot of healing arts practices, yoga, meditation, a lot of energetic medicine. There are, I would probably say, hundreds of types of breath work out there. We will not touch on all of them. I will share, like I said, books, and I will share a PDF with some breath work, different practices, as well as videos on different practices, and my favorite and some other ones, but so many different types of breath work out there. This is all the benefits of breath work, like excuse me, similar to meditation. The list can really go on and on. Increased creativity, lower stress, depression, better sleep patterns. Breath work is super, super powerful on a physiological level as well. So we can have this is one where we can stimulate or we can calm the nervous system with it. So you can use stimulating breath work to increase sympathetic response, which increases respiration, heart rate, decreases digestion, increases energy to muscles. This is great if you feel like you're falling asleep in the middle of your day and you need to increase your energy or focus, but often it can be overstimulating. This is one that I say only do it if you really know what you're doing, and if you feel comfortable kind of overstimulating yourself, you know how to bring yourself back down. Sometimes athletes will use it before, before playing their sport, before giving a big presentation, or if they feel like they need a little pick-me-up. Calming and relaxing breath is that opposite end. Rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system, that kind of decreased. Any sort of relaxing breath is always, always, always going to focus on slow breathing, controlled inhales, and long exhales. It increases the relaxation response, and it can really help rewire the brain and train the brain to slow down. And back to that mindfulness, it can create that distance between stimulus and response when you slow your breath down. The missing pillar of health is breath. I'm going to save the breathwork practice to the end just so we can get to all the good stuff here, because there's literally a million breathwork practices. My number one, box breathing. I use it all the time. I think it is the easiest thing to do. You inhale for X amount of time, hold for X amount of time, exhale, and then hold. Most commonly, it's 4, 4, 4, 4. I personally love to do it while walking. 4 steps inhale, 4 steps hold, 4 steps exhale, 4 steps hold. It's a great a great stress reliever, but also can improve concentration. If you really want to crank it up a notch, you can also increase that second half. So you can do like inhale 4, hold 4, exhale, say 6, hold 6. That's going to even tip you more into that parasympathetic, because anytime you are emphasizing the exhale, you are getting more into the parasympathetic state versus the sympathetic state. Alternate nostril breathing. It's called Nadi Shodhana in yoga. You'll have a video of this as well. Using your hands to breathe through opposite nostrils. It's hard if you have a deviated septum and not recommended. You can kind of visualize it, but if you literally close off one side, inhale, close, exhale, inhale, close, exhale. I have a deviated septum, so it's quite hard for me, but it helps soothe the nerves, and it's really balancing to the hemispheres of the brain, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a couple moments. But it's a really, really commonly used in kind of the yoga world. 4-7-8 breathing, similar to box breathing, you're counting your breaths. A lot of people, this is their go-to for anxiety. It's kind of the most used one for anxiety. A lot of people have seen mental health care practitioners. This is the one they always come to me and be like, oh yeah, I know 4-7-8 breathing. You inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. It's really mostly about the exhales here. The longer the exhale, the more relaxed you're going to be. Really great for anxiety and sleep. Wim Hof. Has anyone heard of Wim Hof? It's like, oh, this is like the guy who like goes and like sits on like ice caps in the middle of nowhere and like melts ice around him with his own body heat. Like he does, like he jumps in cold water, does this crazy breathing. Super interesting guy. And actually, like this stuff the stuff he does is bonkers, but like people are starting to study it now and be like, oh wow, he's not just making it up to make money. But it's a really intense breath, and it's really meant for building resiliency and increasing your tolerance to stress. So you take these like 30 powerful breaths, like inhale and hold as long as you can, and then exhale, and you keep doing it. So it's about like ramping up your physiology and then slowing it back down to really get this nervous system flexibility. It's another one where I really don't recommend doing it unless you're practicing with someone else, unless you're really confident in your ability to like be present with yourself, or you do it with a practitioner. I actually just bought his book, so I'm intrigued as to how how out there he is. So I'll let you know. Holotropic breathing is another one that's really common in like the trauma and emotional healing world and personal growth. But it's another one. I'll be honest, I don't include how to do it because I would recommend it. It's really meant to be done in a group and facilitated by a practitioner. It's not something you're meant to do solo. I spelled Ujjayi very wrong here. Ujjayi breath, which is Sanskrit for victorious breath. It's commonly what's used. It's 2 J's and no C. I don't know where that C came from.
I've never seen it written down.
Yeah, it's 2 J's and no C. Yeah. I don't know where that C came from. That must have been just a stray finger on the keyboard. The Sanskrit for victorious breath. It's you inhale through the nose and you exhale kind of against your throat. So it's that breath that sounds like, I can't even really do it like well. It's like I feel like you can't hear me, but you'll hear people do it in yoga where it's like inhaling and then you press the tongue against the roof of your mouth and you kind of exhale against the resistance of your throat, but you keep your mouth closed.
I had a yoga teacher who called it like Darth Vader breathing. Like
yes,
Darth Vader.
Yeah, exactly. Darth Vader breathing. Like it's about creating resistance, and that is also ramping up your physiology. It's used in a lot of power yoga classes during the sun A's to kind of like fire things up. Diaphragmatic breathing, we've talked about the diaphragm a lot, but it's really just expanding into that rib cage and diaphragm. I do it all sorts of ways. There will be a practice called around the world breathing. I teach that in my restorative yoga classes a lot. Not that I teach restorative yoga a lot now, but when I do teach restorative yoga, I teach around the world breathing, and you focus expanding your diaphragm forward, side, back. And when you breathe with your diaphragm, you are very much massaging the vagus nerve because the vagus nerve runs straight through the diaphragm. So if you are breathing with it, you're massaging that nerve. Which is why it's super powerful and more people need to use their diaphragm to regulate the nervous systems. 3-part breathing, I usually do it as like inhale, exhale through the chest a couple times, then do chest, rib cage, and then, kind of rib cage, chest, then chest, rib cage, low belly, rib cage, chest. So it's about kind of like deepening your breath down into the pelvic bowl. Similar, it also activates the parasympathetic nervous system because of that effect with the diaphragm. Prone breathing, honestly, it's just diaphragmatic breathing on your back. I find it as a really great way to kind of like expand. If your rib cage is feeling really tight, your upper back's feeling really tight, laying on your stomach and focusing on breath into the back side of your body can really help with upper back tension. I use it a lot when people have headaches as well because it can give you a little bit more space there. So this is actually the stuff that I really wanted to get to. And there's more breathwork practices I'm going to share with you guys in a PDF. I have this book called How to Breathe by Ashley NYNS. Oh, I thought I was going to knock everything over. And it's literally just, it's like not like anything crazy, but just different ways to like use your breath in different patterns. And I like this because it's like, I'm sharing a couple of practices with you guys, like pain, focus, things like that. So it's just like a little like just different ways to manipulate your breath to embody different things. So I'll send you guys a whole list of ways that you can practice there. But this is what is super important with the nervous system. Each inhalation stimulates your heart to beat a little bit faster. Each exhalation, the heart gets a message to slow down. So that's why practices that focus on the exhalation are going to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, because you are telling your heart to slow down, which then tells your nervous system that we're going into parasympathetic. So it's that kind of two-way street. When you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, your heart slows down. But when you use breath to decrease your heart rate, you then stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. Does that make sense how it can be like two ways there? So any practice that is inhalation based is going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. Every exhalation is going to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. Overall, when we breathe, there's very little change in the heart rate from minute to minute, but we can use our breath to really change our heart rate. When I have people in person, I use a pulse ox. Why was this going to start beeping? I should not have brought that out. But I can watch people when they take inhales, their heart rate will increase. When they take an exhale, their heart rate will decrease. And then I don't do it often, but you can calculate their heart rate variability like that. It's like a complicated math equation, so I don't really do it often, but that's how you can calculate heart rate variability. And when you extend that exhale, you're sending the feedback to your brain that everything is more peaceful and calm than it was a few minutes ago. And this helps the brain shift into rest and digest. So that's where you can use your breath to affect your brain and your nervous system, but your nervous system can also affect your breath. Just recognizing the power of that back and forth is honestly, if you take anything away from breath work, it's just recognizing that power of there being a back and forth. You can access your parasympathetic nervous system with your breath. This last piece, nasal breathing, I want to touch on because it's super important and something that I've been thinking about with my own personal health and my family health. If you or anyone you know has sleep apnea or any obstructive kind of sleep disorders or snores, this is really powerful stuff. And the book Breathe by James Nestor is an amazing resource. There is some shocking research that the guy did on himself in there that I highly recommend kind of reviewing. But basically, the obvious thing is we should all be breathing through our nose 24/7. Your nose is for breathing. Your mouth is for eating and speaking. Our nose was quite literally built to clear, heat, and moisten air for easier absorption. Our modern world, our modern society has made us more mouth breathers. And in his book specifically, but there's research that shows our facial structures have changed over the past 50 years because of the way that we breathe. Like evolutionarily, we've longer faces and different jaws and more narrow jaws and palates, which really affects the way that our nervous system and kind of creates more of this heightened nervous system state. And it's just crazy what orthodontists, and it's a lot of the reason why we all need, like, we in the past, say like even 30 years, there's been more orthodontic work than ever before. In this book, he was talking about how like this one guy went around, this in the 1800s, and went to Native American tribes, and they were all super tall. They all had really prominent bone structures in their cheeks and jaws and perfect teeth. And they had never seen a dentist in their life. And this guy was like, why do they have perfect teeth? And like all, people in quote unquote more civilized societies have all these like wonky teeth. And in Native American culture, breathing through your nose is that's like what kids are punished for in Native American culture. Like, close your mouth. That's like a huge thing in Native American culture. And because breath is life, and it's a big part of their spiritual practices too. So it affects your teeth. That's just showing how much it affects your face and your teeth and all of that. So I thought that was super interesting. Having had lots of orthodontic work myself. Yes, go for it.
So even when there's like a sweat lodge, or can you hear me?
Yep.
Even when they do a sweat, they still want you to breathe through your nose.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
That's so
It's like the
interesting.
most important and most like all the research is pointing to, like when you're sleeping, breathe through your nose. There's some, like I will sometimes tape my mouth when I'm working out, so I remember to breathe through my nose. But the problem is a lot of us also have nasal obstruction, myself included. That makes it harder.
Mm-hmm.
So another really cool thing with,
we think about what in some cultures, yawning is like dangerous because you can like let bad things in through your mouth when you're breathing through your mouth. And why people even say, I mean, often in this culture it's like God bless you, but it really comes from like, it's like wishing somebody good health when they yawn, like Gesundheit. It's like good luck because you just let some like bad stuff into your mouth from opening it and breathing.
yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And I think, you know, in terms of bad stuff, this is where nasal breathing is going to be really powerful. It's really, there's research that shows that if you breathe through your nose, you're less likely to get viruses. I'm not saying that it's going to prevent COVID completely, but your nose is supposed to be clearing, like it's the first part of your immune system is the cilia in your nose. So when you breathe through your mouth, you're more likely to get sick because you're not having that, you're bypassing the first realm of defense in your, which is the cilia, the little hairs in your nose. Which is why when people get like allergies, their nose gets stuffy because their nose is trying to get the offensive, for lack of a better word, particle out. Yeah, super cool. There's also natural nasal cycles. So every 30 minutes to 4 hours, the nose, one nostril get congested and translate to the other.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. There's actually erectile tissue, like the same
I had
tissue.
no idea it was a real thing.
Yeah. The same tissue that's in like your genitals is in your nose. It's erectile tissue, and it expands and contracts rhythmically, different for everyone. And when you're sick, the erectile tissue becomes really inflamed, and or when you're in stressful states, it can come really inflamed. So it has a huge role. There's also really interesting research. I didn't put it on here, but connecting like people who are mouth breathers with erectile dysfunction and even women's menstrual cycles. I don't know as much about that, but it did come up in my research, and I was like, that's really interesting. But it makes sense if it's the same kind of tissue.
Yeah, it does.
There's also this kind of right and left nostril business, which is, this is kind of a newer practice for me, but basically and it has to do with the hemispheres of your brain as well. But when you're breathing more through your right nostrils, that kind of gas pedal, circulation speeds up, cortisol levels increase, blood pressure increases, and sympathetic nervous system increases. It also will feed more blood to the opposite side hemisphere, the left hemisphere, which is more of that prefrontal cortex of logical decision making, language, and computing. Left nostril is more of the brakes, connected to the parasympathetic nervous system that rests and digests, and it shifts the blood flow to the other side, creative thought, emotions, formation of mental abstracts, negative emotions. This is a little bit less studied and a little bit more hypothesized in like spirit and more like a cultural practices, like the Nadi Shodhana, the alternate nostril breathing. And that's why alternate nostril breathing is really balancing, because you're stimulating the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere alternatively. Like I said, there's a little bit less research on this, but I thought it was kind of interesting, just talking about the nervous system, how you can kind of stimulate other senses. This also goes in line with slow breathing. And I know we're a couple minutes over. We're going to be done in like 3 or 4 minutes, so I apologize. But nasal breathe, most people who breathe through their mouth breathe significantly faster than people who breathe through your nose. And really, the ideal rate to breathe is 5.5 seconds of an inhale and 5.5 seconds of an exhale, which is almost exactly 5.5. I think it's 5.5 breaths a minute. Yeah. So slow breathing is really important for the function of the heart, the circulation, and the nervous system. It's when our body's in its best state of coherence and nervous system regulation. Most of us breathe entirely too much. And overbreathing has so many detrimental health effects. I didn't quite realize it until I started studying it. and it has to do with the availability of oxygen and the way it gets to our tissues. A lot of people think breathing more gets more oxygen to its tissues. It doesn't. It has to do with relative like tissue. Oh my gosh, just lost the word for it. Like tissue saturation. Like when your tissues have more, when you need an inverse relationship. If you have too much oxygen in your body, it's not going to get into your muscles. So it's not, if you're a healthy individual, inhaling pure oxygen is going to do nothing for you. It's not going to be beneficial. It's not going to increase the delivery of your tissues. It's actually going to create an oxygen deficiency, because if you're putting more into your bloodstream, your body's going to think it has too much oxygen. So the thing that actually drives respiration is carbon dioxide. So yeah, this is just a little bit from the oxygen advantage of what habitual overbreathing does. It impairs the ability of your blood cells to release oxygen, which is not great for getting oxygen to our muscles and other areas. And overbreathing is going to decrease the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood, which then will make it hard. I know this is like a little nitty gritty, but it will make it harder for the muscles to get rid of carbon dioxide, which we want the muscle. If there's too much carbon dioxide in the muscles, that's not good for our body. So it's just this habitual overbreathing essentially is going to have really adverse effects. It's a very complicated like science to it. It's very like, I shouldn't say it's very hard to explain. It's very hard for me to put it into like simple words that are not. The more oxygenated you are, think about hyperventilating. How people they try to get people to breathe into a bag. That's because they're trying to get more carbon dioxide into their system to kick their body into a slower nervous system state. So when you overbreathe, you're reducing oxygen in your body, which is not what we want. And it can increase fatigue during exercise and really limit sports performance. There's a lot of work with doing this oxygen advantage program for athletes in particular, especially high altitude athletes. I have a whole PDF on different oxygen advantage practices, and we're going to do one in just a second, but it improves a lot of your physical performance to not only breathe through your nose, but slow your breath rate down. And like I said, this is really complicated. I'm still trying to find better ways to explain it, because the oxygen advantage book is thick, and like I probably should read it 3 more times before like really getting all of it. But it basically, the main takeaway is breathe through your nose and breathe less. Super important for heart health, for inflammation, all that good stuff. So what we're all going to do to finish out is take a BOLT test, and then I'm going to give you some breathing practice. I'll give you a homework, and then we'll take a BOLT test the next time we meet. So a BOLT test is literally, it's a way to measure how well you're using oxygen. So I'm going to read this all to you, and then I'm going to walk you through it. So what you do is you take a small breath in through your nose and a small breath out through your nose, and then you hold your nose so you don't breathe. I will count the number of seconds, and you're going to raise your hand when you start breathing through your mouth, but you count the number of seconds until you feel your first desire to breathe. Not until you're choking, but until you feel that first kind of pulse or in your neck or your heart. And you may also feel like your abdomen jerk. Then you're going to release your nose and breathe in and out. So the number is what we're looking for. The number that how long you can hold your breath until you feel that first desire to breathe. Like I said, you just raise your hand. I will write down what it is. I'm going to give you one recommendation, and then we're going to retest it in 2 weeks. Sound like fun? And you can do this on your own too if you want to do it again, but if you want to do it now, you're going to take an inhale through your nose, exhale through your nose, close your nose, hold your breath. Let go of your nose when you are done, and I will do my best to get everyone at the same time. Good, gotcha. Good. Alrighty. I will send you your interpretations of that tomorrow in your follow-up email. But so the homework is going to be, I want you once a day to focus on breathing in and out through your nose only during pick an activity, whether it's like doing the dishes, the laundry, a walk. You're going to only breathe through your nose. If that means you have to physically tape your mouth shut, go for it. But do it someplace like where you feel like safe enough to, like, you know, if tape your mouth shut, like you don't have to do it at the grocery. I mean, you can do it at the grocery store, but you don't have to. But you're going to breathe through your nose and pick an activity that is not super taxing. Like I do it now while working out, but I've built up to that. So like do it while you're like doing a home task. I want you guys to work on that for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll check back in and kind of retest and talk about it a little bit. How's that sound?
Like the same activity every day, or it doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter. Just one activity a day. Yeah. If like for your, like, I'm going to come off the share so I can see you guys. If you feel like it's easier to do, like if there's one activity you do every day, go for it. Like sometimes I'll do it on my morning walks, but just in general, one activity a day, try it for. And then just also start to notice when you're breathing in through your nose versus your mouth. You'll be really surprised at what your patterns are. I know I was. Awesome. Well,
Cool.
that was a lot. Thank you for sticking around for an extra couple minutes with me. I will send out an email first thing in the morning. Modules up. There's actually a deeper dive into breath work up, a lecture up there, about an hour-long lecture on breath work with a couple more demonstrations. There's the journal prompts are up there, and I'm going to be adding a little bit more as we go on. And just because I just even talking today, there's a couple more things I wanted to add into the module, kind of as I shared. So there'll be a couple meditations, a couple of breathwork videos, a list of some of the action advantage practices, resources, all sorts of good stuff to start to play around with. And we can kind of keep going from there. But my number one thing is try that nasal breathing. I think it will be really interesting what pops up. And in our next session, we will do some movement, some nervous system based movement, but we also will do a longer meditation and a longer breathwork practice than we have before, just to kind of emphasize everything we're talking about this month.
Yay.
Any questions before we head off?
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie.
Of course. So good to see you both. I hope you feel better, Julie, and I hope you have a wonderful time, Liza, and get some relaxation in.
Thank you.
Will you be writing at all, or are you just relaxing?
Pardon?
Are you writing or just relaxing?
As of today, I'm diving back in. I'm writing, I'm doing some tax work.
Yeah, cool.
I'm doing a little bit of everything.
Well, enjoy either way.
And I'll get in touch about our one-on-one.
Yes, definitely. And I hope I see you Monday, Julie, if you're feeling better. Bye. Oh, hi. Bye, Liza. Tell Tim I said hi.
I will. See you, honey.